Hey folks, hope you're well out there, out here at the sawmill as normal. Today I'm going to talk about something that I got reminded of recently as it relates to sawing, and that's the 0.7 rule. Now, a friend of mine over in Quebec, Canada, kind of the next door neighbor to the Ontario province, he has a store over there and he's also a sawyer, and he cuts a lot of wood. And well, he reminded me in a video of his recently of the 0.7 rule that haven't used in quite some time, but I probably should. What the whole goal of this 0.7 rule is to give you a little bit of a reference so that when you start cutting, assuming you know the diameter of the log at the small end, you know exactly what the maximum cant size is going to be. And that reference, a lot of people keep out of their sawmill in various forms. Looks something like this. And I don't know if you'll be able to see all those numbers on there, but on the right-hand column, you'll see log diameter in inches. That's at the small end. And then the maximum cant size is on the left. And so this little reference sheet gives you a quick little look and gives you a quick idea where you need to make your first cut, knowing that your second cut is going to be that maximum cant size. And so I'm going to put that back into action here today. Now I just have it in a little protective coating here, but I'll probably get that thing laminated once I can find a laminator, and then I'll put it up here somewhere. But I think that's going to save me just a few extra steps. Sometimes you have to guess. Over time though, you develop some experience. You can pretty much look at a log and know its diameter, but it's always good to save yourself an extra cut wherever you can. Just taking a step back here, if you don't know what the 0.7 rule is, if you had a 10-inch log, 70% of it will end up being the maximum cant size. 70% of 10 inches is 7 inches, so you're going to get a 7-inch by 7-inch cant out of a 10-inch diameter on the small end log. That's more or less how it works. Now, with a 10-inch log, the math's pretty easy. When you start getting into some harder numbers, well, that's when you have this little reference guide. If you have a look at mine once again, there's a 6-inch diameter log, gives you a 4-inch cant size. 4 is 70% of 6. Now 7 inches, notice it gets a little bit harder. 7-inch small diameter, 4 3/4 is your maximum cant size. So this gives you a good estimate, and if you intend on getting a particular cant size, it allows you to know whether the log will produce it or not. And if it can't, there's no point in trying. You might as well move on to a different lumber size. So there's my little reference sheet, as I said. We'll keep that up there. Now, if you're wondering how I'm going to figure out the small end diameter before I start cutting, I'm probably just going to lower the saw head until the laser touches the top of the small end diameter, and then I can read it directly off the scale. Alternatively, to make it even easier for me, if I turn on the setworks here, it'll give me the readout. It'll tell me the exact height the blade is at, assuming I have it lined up with the top of the small end. All right, let's tension the blade before we get going. Just watch the indicator here. I'm going right around 1,000, give or take, maybe a touch under it. Okay, so there's 1,000. I'll just go just above it, just like so. We'll lock her in, settles in nicely, and that'll hold it. That's a hydraulic tensioner, by the way. Aside from that, there's my blade I'm using. It's a 2-inch unit. That's pretty big, 223 inches in length. Anyways, here's our log. That looks to me, estimation, we'll see how close I am here. I would say that's probably a 7.5-inch log. Let's get the tape and just see if I'm remotely close at all. I'm off by about 3/4 of an inch. That's 8 1/4. But anyways, that'll be a good cant for me with that chart. Well, there we have it. The log pile is gone. I'll have to replenish that. We'll go out in the bush, get some more logs, stop the rot, that's for sure. There's an endless supply of them out there. You can't see them for all the brush here, but it goes way up there and way over here, down there. You get the point. So I got lots of work to do. But first things first, I got to get this stacked up. One of those jobs I don't really like doing. If I could cut non-stop, I would be completely fine with that. If I could get rid of the stacking job, I'd be fine with that too. But it kind of goes with the territory, so I'll do just that. Then, as I said, I'll be back out to the woods. I'll have the log loader trailer behind me, picking up more logs, bringing them back to the sawmill, and away I go. Now, the 0.7 rule here, or the 0.7 chart, it's handy. It's handy for sure. If nothing else, it gives you a bit of a reference. I know after sawing a lot of the same size material for a long time, I kind of know what a log is going to give me. But it never hurts to have a little bit of a reference, especially when you start getting different size material in here. Once again, the Clarke Model 350/38, that thing is super fast. As you can see, it's all I can do to keep up with it. I am certainly not waiting on that to keep up with me. I am way slower than that thing is. I could probably have a 3-person crew out here and keep that thing busy, that's for sure. Now, getting the logs loaded up, that was the only handling I had to do. Aside from that, all these pieces of equipment up here, all these add-ons, log turner, log clamps, log stops, these do all the hard work, especially that thing. I'm finding that to be one of my favorite tools right there, the log turner. Don't forget the debarker, real handy. And don't forget, give her the old like-a-roo as I call it. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time.